Have you told yourself that you're not a fan of beans? Well, I'm about to change your mind. This recipe that we're doing today checks all the boxes. It is cheap, it is made with real food, it is a one-pot meal in a slow cooker if you wish, and it's also freezer meal friendly. It is also one that can be made in advance, or at least started prepping in advance to save you time. It is kid friendly, and of course it is simple and delicious. And on top of all this, it can be tailored in so many different ways to fit your family's needs and taste. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I teach you all about real whole grains from a biblical perspective. I teach you how and why to be milling your own grains, baking that bread, using real whole grains in your kitchen, and more. Okay, so if you've been around for a hot minute, I talk all about grains, and most of that we think of as wheat, especially here in the United States, but there are so many other grains just in the wheat family, in the grain family, and then in the bean family. And beans are absolutely wonderful. They are typically cheap, they are filling, they are very nutritious, especially when you combine it with freshly milled breads and other whole grains and fruits and vegetables, so on and so forth. Now, if you've also been around long enough, you know that I am a huge fan of authentic Mexican cooking, and there are many different reasons for that. And one of the main reasons is that with authentic Mexican cooking, you're eating a lot of real foods that taste absolutely incredible, but they are usually on the cheaper side as well. Eating real foods doesn't actually break the bank. Today, I'm going to be bringing you into my kitchen and kind of walking you through the way that I make one particular Mexican recipe, which is charro beans. Now, don't click off this video because you instantly thought, well, beans are so boring, because they're not. You do it in the right way and they are not boring. And this is one of the recipes that definitely proves that. So it's called charro beans because it's actually named after the charros of Mexico, which as Americans, we would typically label them as Mexican cowboys. They are also known as the rancheros, and they were a cultural icon in Mexico. Fun fact, I've actually been to an authentic Mexican rodeo that was put on by these rancheros, and it was like super cool. It was really cool. So in essence, this was a dish that was created to feed very hungry, manly cowboys, okay? And basically, if you have sons in your family or boys or men in your family, you're feeding hungry cowboys, especially if they're teenage boys. Now, since this recipe is made with beans, it can be made pretty cheaply, but there's also a variety of meats in here as well that can make it tempting even for the diehard meat lover in your family. Now, depending on the meats that you use can certainly cause this meal to go up in price, but that's the beauty of this meal, is that it can be very flexible to fit your budget and your taste. And plus, with it being authentic Mexican food, that means the flavors are going to be off the charts because they do wonders with seasonings and spices and all of those things. And also know that this can be as spicy or as mild of a flavor as you want. Okay, so the recipe that I'll be using will be in the description box below, but just know that I definitely cook with my heart, especially when it comes to the seasonings and the flavors. So I'm going to be bringing you in and just walking you along my thought process as I make this meal for my family. Now, as usual, because I have a large family, I am doubling this recipe. So I will probably be telling you the measurements that are in the written recipe, the printable recipe in the description box below, but you're going to actually see me double this recipe, and I'll remind you of that as well. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to it. First up, we need to cook the beans, and I'm actually going to do that in a slow cooker. This is a new one that I have. It's called the Bideem slow cooker, and it's super cool because it's two parts like this. And this pot I can actually use on the stove. It's nonstick, and you can even use your own pot on this. And I've actually come to really like this slow cooker, but we're going to use that today for the beans. And the beans that I use is from Hacienda. These are heirloom beans straight from the heart of Mexico, and I love them. This is one of their pinto bean varieties because they are also beautiful. But if you do not use these type of beans, that's okay. Just basically use pinto beans is what is more traditional with this recipe. So again, I'm doubling this recipe, but you want a pound of beans, which is roughly about 2 cups. And these are, look at these beans, like they are so stunning and so beautiful, and it really adds character to this meal. But again, regular pinto beans is fine. So this part's hard. Pay attention, y'all. You're going to add the beans to the slow cooker, and then you're going to add the water. So for 1 pound of beans, it's 6 cups of water. And then That's it. Now you can add some onion, some garlic, some Mexican oregano here. That's totally fine. I didn't. I just cooked this, and this slow cooker actually has a bean setting, and I just put it on the bean setting, and it cooked it for 6 hours, and it was great. If you don't have that, that's fine. You can cook it on high for about 4 to 6 hours, or on low in your slow cooker for 6 to 8 hours. Of course, you can also just cook the beans on the stove as well. But this is 6 hours later on the bean setting, and it goes ahead and keeps it warm. But look at them. They are absolutely beautiful and stunning. And it just looks great. And it makes it so easy because from here you can go ahead and just store the beans for later or go ahead and proceed this meal. So you do need to drain the beans. Keep the water though. So this is the water, and I added enough to get up to, again, I'm doubling, so 8 cups, but if you're not doubling, you need to get it up to 4 cups of broth. And I added that chicken bouillon in there, and I measured with my heart. You can just use water if you want to. And then I'm going to put this on the saute setting, so I can still use the same pot. I didn't wash it. And then we're going to just saute the bacon in here. We're going to cook the bacon. Again, you can do this all on the stove top. That's totally fine, or in an Instant Pot if you have the saute setting on the Instant Pot. But I do have the bacon here. You can use beef bacon. You can use turkey bacon if you want to. I wouldn't. But bottom line, bacon, or you can omit it. And this, we're going to basically cook it until the fat is rendered. And in the meantime, I'm going to be prepping everything else. And so this is just an onion. I'm of the opinion onion and garlic is measured with the heart. And that is what we're doing. But we're going to be finely dicing this onion while, again, you just see me switching back and forth with the bacon. And then we're going to use a jalapeno. Now, with doubling the recipe, I did not double the jalapenos. I just used one. I also use gloves because I have a cut on my hand, and it really hurts if you get pepper juice on it. So don't wipe your face or your mouth or anything whenever dealing with peppers. Trust me, ask me how I know. So I'm using gloves. So I'm just dicing up that one jalapeno, and I removed the seeds to make it less spicy, but you can omit the jalapeno if you want. And then here, recipes sometimes call for hot dogs or like chorizo. This is just a typical sausage. You can use like a beef sausage here, an andouille sausage, whatever type of sausage you like to use, really, you can use that. And then we're going to be peeling up the garlic as well. I think I used about 5 garlic. Again, measure garlic with your heart. And we're just mincing that, prepping everything, getting ready to go for whenever that bacon is done. And then the recipe does call for fresh tomatoes. I didn't have any. We're using diced. And y'all, this can opener here is a lifesaver for me. I'll link it down below. But look at it. You just pop it on, and it's electric, and it just whizzes it together. I got it off of Amazon because this is so a rabbit trail. I found that can openers these days are horrible. Like they break so easily with the hand ones, and I was just done struggling with them. I was tired of them always breaking when I had a can to open. And so I searched for this. This had good reviews, and it works beautifully. It actually was a good price. And it leaves a smooth edge on the can, and it just makes it easier because I just pop it on there and I work with other things, and then when it's done, it's now done. And then you can just pop it off, and it's that smooth edge, so I can technically just put the lid right back on there if I wanted to. I'm not going to, but that's a side note. So we're going to set that aside. You can use fresh tomatoes if you want. But now that that bacon is done and you've got that grease in there, don't drain the grease. So if you've omitted the bacon, or maybe you've used something with less fat, like a turkey bacon or beef bacon, you may need to add a little bit of oil just to give it a little bit of that grease in there so the onions don't stick. Because basically you're going to add the onions and the jalapeno, and you're adding the sausage, and you're basically cooking this until the onions are pretty soft. So pretty straightforward. Now we have the chipotle and adobo sauce. Do not leave this out. You can leave the jalapeno out. I heavily recommend you do not leave the chipotle and adobo sauce out. This adds such flavor to this dish. I actually think this is like the key to this dish being amazing. That's my opinion, because this is just so good. This is not spicy. When I made this dish, it wasn't really spicy at all. If you wanted more spice, I would up that jalapeno, or maybe even add in another chipotle pepper, but I didn't. So we just dice that up. And then after the onions are all cooked up, we just add in the garlic, and we add in the canned tomatoes. If I was using fresh tomatoes, I'd need to wait for those to cook down a bit, but they're canned. I don't have to. We just stirred it in. I added the chipotle pepper, and then we're adding in our cumin seasoning. And then we just stir all that up. And then we add our beans back. And this is where this no longer became a one pot recipe for me, because my pot wasn't big enough for me doubling this, because now I'm adding this 8 cups of bean juice and liquid back into it, and it didn't fit. So I actually just transfer this into a larger pot for me. And then we just move this over to the stove, which was fine because I'm making tortillas anyway. And so what you do is whenever you get the liquid back in, you then want to bring that all back up to a boil and simmer. But here I'm making the tortillas. This is with Hacienda's Masa Harina. This is their blue corn. I do not use any other Masa Harina, and I never will again, ever. Hacienda is the best. And I promise they're not sponsoring this video. I just really love them that much. And this is their tortilla press and the blue corn. And I'm just sitting here and I'm just going to be making these tortillas while the charro beans finish cooking. So again, you're just bringing that up to a boil and then simmer. And basically you're simmering until it kind of gets to the thickness that you like, because it'll just thicken up as the more that it simmers. I had it where it was a little bit more soupy. But either way, we are just cooking up these tortillas. If you want to know how I make my tortillas and also how I nixtamalize the corn myself to actually make masa harina, because you can't just grind up corn flour to make corn tortillas, you have to nixtamalize that. I will link all of those videos down below because it is a process. I have a few to tell you, but for me, whenever I want like really nice thin tortillas, I just buy the masa harina, because we have no grinders at home that can get the masa dough fine enough for these super fine tortillas. But again, there are other videos for that. So this is kind of like my one exception where I don't always just grind it myself and do it myself. It's still a whole grain. Again, a whole other video. So we're just going to finish this up. Do know one key thing with beans is I just added the salt, and I add the salt very last, like at the end of all cooking, because I found that if you add salt while you're cooking your beans, it can actually make the beans harder and also just longer to cook. So huge key tip there, revolutionized my bean cooking when I realized that. So I just add the salt at the very end when the beans are cooked and everything like that. And you basically want to salt and pepper to your taste. So when you taste these charro beans, if you find that, hey, you know, they want more onion or more garlic, I just add like more onion powder or more garlic powder, or maybe some oregano, more salt, more pepper, maybe more cumin. All depends on what you like. But salt, you know, season to your taste, follow your heart when it comes to your seasonings. And we are just going to wrap this up. It actually doesn't take long at all whenever you prepped all this. If you do want to freeze this meal, just obviously you have to let everything cool down completely and then freeze it as you normally would. But we are done. And how I'm serving this is we have limes, we have queso fresco, and we have some diced cilantro. And of course, our our tortillas. I should have made way more than these, but it is what it is. So I actually just scoop these up. You can serve these over rice to really make it stretch out, or just serve it as is. You can see it's a bit more soupy, and then I add on the cheese, the cilantro, we do the limes, we do the tortillas. You can add on like extra diced onions or maybe sliced radishes, really whatever you like. It's your meal. But there it is. It is beautiful. These Hacienda beans just really give the bean dish character with having those different type of colored beans. But this is so good. So that's it, y'all. This was absolutely amazing. My family loved this meal. Do you know this is absolutely great if you want to freeze this meal for later, or you can certainly like cook the beans in advance and then use it later on during the week. There's just so much flexibility with this particular meal, even changing up the meat. So I know many of my audience, several of y'all do not eat pork. That's no problem with this. You can substitute with whatever meats that you like. Just be mindful of cooking times, if it's already cooked, those type of things. And as I mentioned, if you were actually wanting to know how to nixtamalize corn and make tortillas or hominy or those type of things in your home from scratch yourself, then be sure to check out this video here to give y'all those directions. As always, I hope y'all really enjoy this meal and this recipe, and y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.